young, flamboyant boy who was a dancer and a hairdresser in a very male-dominated outback environment that holds super strong and masculine stereotypes. Stop comparing yourself to everyone else. Let things inspire you to better yourself, but don't copy and definitely don't compare. And so Mum pulled up outside of the salon I knew I wanted to work at, and I took myself in and handed in my resume. From that point, it took me about 5 years to get graded out of intermediate and into open, but I was so determined to do so. So using busy as an excuse to not put the extra work in was not going to give me results, and I knew that. If you're willing to do what others won't, you'll always have what others don't. Call me Dr. Seuss, but live by that. Hey everyone, my name is Ben Wright. I'm 22 years old and I've been a dancer for A Taste of Ireland since 2018. In this episode of Journey to the Stage, I share with you the obstacles that I've overcome and the sacrifices that I've had to make in order to achieve my goals and dreams, and how I carry with me the lessons I've learned along the way to continue to do so. From growing up in a small country town to dancing professionally with A Taste of Ireland and moving to Brisbane to work with some of Australia's best hairdressers at Wright Hair, I hope you enjoy this episode of Journey to the Stage. So my journey starts in my hometown of Mount Isa, which is a super small and remote mining town in northwest Queensland, only a few hundred kilometres from the Northern Territory border. And I grew up there with Mum and Dad, my two older brothers Aaron and Cameron, and also Nan. And there's a fairly big age gap between my older brothers and I. There's 8 years between me and Cameron, and there's 10 years between me and Aaron. And when they were growing up, they were doing sports like soccer. Cameron was a really great soccer player, and Aaron, I believe, rode BMX. They certainly weren't doing sports like Irish dancing, but I began dancing when I was 7 years old. How I got into Irish dancing was actually a really funny story, because we were a massive footy family. We are huge footy fans, and on a Friday and Saturday night, that was what we did. We watched the footy at our house and friends would come over, or we would go to friends' houses and watch the footy there. And down the road from our friend's house was an Irish family, and their daughter actually did Irish dancing. And so all of us kids would get out into the front yard and she would try and teach us how to dance. And so I picked it up and I was like, this is pretty cool, I want to give this a go for real. My friend Monique and I went to our parents and we were like, we want to give this Irish dancing thing a go. And of course at first they were like, what? Are you serious? What is this? But my parents are absolutely the most supportive people on this planet. So they were like, okay, let's give it a go. Actually, Dad took me to my first dance lesson, and I remember walking into that lesson and just being gobsmacked by the seniors, as you normally are when you're like this big and you walk into a dance class. And I was like, wow, I want to be as good as them one day. You know, when you start dancing, you're dancing everywhere you go. You're dancing up and down the supermarket aisles and whatnot. But I fell completely in love with Irish dancing instantly. From that point, I was shown the Riverdance and Lord of the Dance videos. It's pretty safe to say that I became pretty obsessed with those. I would watch them over and over and over and over again. That was probably one of the first times where my eyes were opened up to the outside world, to things outside of my little bubble in Mount Isa. And it was probably one of the first times that I was like, okay, maybe I can dream bigger than what is inside my bubble. I could do this thing that I loved and perform to thousands of people and do it professionally and whatnot. And although I was completely in love with Irish dancing, I probably didn't take it seriously, like competition-wise, until I was around 10. and a wonderful lady by the name of Catherine King came into my life, and Catherine took over the dance classes from that point forward. Catherine had a place within the top 10 nationally. She was multiple time state champion. She competed at the Worlds a few times and had also toured with a few Irish dancing shows as well. Catherine was the one that really sparked my love for the competitive side of Irish dancing. And I remember when she first started teaching us, and it was only a few months out from the state championships, she told me that I was going to go to states for the first time, and I was like, excuse me. So we went, and I was definitely out of my comfort zone. I had no idea what to expect. However, it was probably that competition that changed my mindset. I was completely inspired by the other dancers because we just weren't exposed to that standard back home, you know. These kids are competing almost every second weekend, if not more. And back home we had one local competition a year, then we would travel to the North Queensland Championships, and that's it. And so I came home and that's when I decided I was going to start doing the extra work outside of our 2 classes per week. I had a private class on Sundays, and then I'd practice at home in between classes. And somewhere in the middle of things there, I was starting to go to the gym to cross-train to improve my strength and agility as well. From that point, it took me about 5 years to get graded out of intermediate and into open, but I was so determined to do so. I was starting to travel to Brisbane and around Australia for competitions. So other than mum and dad, who have always been and continue to be behind myself and my brothers in everything we do, Catherine was probably the first person to really, I suppose, back me in my goals and dreams, and one of the first people to really open my eyes up to the outside world and really push me in my abilities both physically and mentally. So Catherine started her family with Andrew, and they decided to move back to Brisbane. I started dancing for the Watkins Academy of Irish Dance when I was about 16, and still at that point I was living in Mount Isa, completing my senior years of schooling. I was lucky enough to have Lauren Gray teaching me at the time, and Lauren, who was actually born and raised in Mount Isa as well. Lauren was multiple time state champion and multiple time national champion. She was a world medal holder on many occasions, I believe. She knew how things had to be done technicality wise, and she had the experience under her belt of what work I had to do to become a stronger dancer. And I honestly count my lucky stars literally every day for Cheryl Watkins, who's the principal dance teacher at the Watkins Academy. She's the one who really gave me a chance and who took me on even from 2,500 kilometers away, because of course the Watkins Academy is based in Brisbane, and she's been a huge mentor to me both in and out of the dance world, and the opportunities that have opened up for me since dancing for Cheryl have been absolutely priceless. So because I was still living in Mount Isa, I was starting to travel to Brisbane more and more for training even, not just for competitions. And I knew that my parents were investing a lot of time and money into my dancing. So in my mind, I knew that I was not only working for myself and the goals that I wanted to achieve, and because I knew I was sacrificing things that other kids weren't, but so were mum and dad. And so I was also working hard and training hard for them as well. Around this time is where everything kind of starts to blend in with each other in terms of my career outside of dancing. So we will continue on with this in just a sec. But in the middle of all of this, I also began my hairdressing career. And hair and fashion has always been something that I've been super interested in from a very young age. And I suppose I always knew that it's what I was going to do long term. I was a creative kid and always drawing and painting and building things. Always was very specific about the way my hair was and what I was wearing. And as we all know, As kids, we're always like chopping and changing the things we want to do when we grow up, you know. One day you want to be a doctor, the next you want to be a firefighter, and so on. But in my mind, I always knew it was hair and fashion. It was about a week or so after my 14th birthday, and I wasn't wasting any more time, and I was determined to get a job. And of course I didn't just want any job, I wanted to work in a salon. And so Mum pulled up outside of the salon I knew I wanted to work at, and I took myself in and handed in my resume. I remember walking in, and Jess, who was one of our stylists at the salon, I said to her, I was like, oh, can I speak to your boss or your manager? And so she went and got Michelle. I explained to her, I handed her my resume. I said, I want to work at your salon. And she explained to me that they weren't really looking for anyone or any tea and tidies or assistants until June. And at that stage, that was the March. And she said, but you can start on Saturday. And so the rest is history. I worked in the salon as a tea and tidy for a year before starting my school-based apprenticeship just before I turned 15, and that's where the juggle started. I had to become good at time management very quickly. I was going through my senior years of high school and was at school 4 days a week. I'd started my school-based apprenticeship, so I was working a Wednesday afternoon, a full day on Thursday, and a full day on Saturday. I had 2 dance classes a week. I had a private on Sunday, and I was still getting trained by a personal trainer and doing my own practice at home in between everything else. And that's when you start questioning how much you really want to achieve your goals. And trust me, I wanted to. So using busy as an excuse to not put the extra work in was not going to give me results, and I knew that. My parents have always been such hard workers and have always taught us boys that you can achieve absolutely anything you want in this world. You've got to make it happen, and you've got to put the work in. And they've worked for absolutely everything they have in their life. I was working towards winning my first state championship, and I was determined to climb the ranks nationally and eventually make it to the world championships. And because I wanted to achieve these things so badly, I didn't have time to complain that I was busy or because I was tired. I just had to suck it up and make time. Quite often I would get home from work at 8 or 9 p.m, scoff down dinner, get changed, and get out the back and train and practice for a few hours, and then I'd have to click back into student mode and get my assignments and homework done. If you aren't willing to make it happen and put the work in, you have to ask yourself how badly you really want it, and in fact, if you want it at all. Michelle, my boss, was the first person to really fuel my passion for hair, I guess, and I still feel so lucky to have worked for her because of how passionate she is about bettering herself and our team. And even though we're in such a remote town and probably further away than anyone from our closest fashion week or hair show, she kept us up to date in education and wanting to strive for more and be better hairdressers. And she was, and still is, so determined to bring, I suppose, a high-end city salon standard to Mount Isa. And she was actually the first person that said to me, you're not staying here. Yeah, I'm not letting you stay in Mount Isa. You need to move to the city. Living in Mount Isa certainly has its pros and cons. Growing up there definitely has its challenges, but also it can be a really, really fulfilling time as well. But now looking back at it, would I change it? Not for the world, because it simply made me stronger and more resilient. I was a young, flamboyant boy who was a dancer and a hairdresser in a very male-dominated outback environment that holds super strong and masculine stereotypes. And there was no doubt that bullying was a pretty prevalent occurrence in my life. And at the time, it hurts so bad because one, these bullies are targeting two things. Simply the way we were born and the way we naturally are in our makeup and our mannerisms and our characteristics. And two, they're targeting and bringing down your passions and the things you know you want to be great at. And of course, there were points there where I didn't want to go to school, and there were times that I thought, well, maybe I shouldn't be dancing if they're bringing me down for doing it. There were times that I remember I wanted mum and dad to send me to boarding school to get away from that environment. Maybe that was just a quick way down to Brisbane. However, the things that got me through were working so hard at the things that I love. Trust me, it feels so good when you achieve something that someone told you that you couldn't and that you're so passionate about. The other thing that got me through was having a really strong support network, which to this day is one of my highest priorities to have. It's imperative. Whoever I invested my energy in and whoever I was surrounding myself with has to be behind me and my goals, or move out of the way. Another hard thing about living there was having big goals dancing wise and the cost of travel, and mum and dad can definitely vouch for this. I look back and reflect on this now, especially after being financially independent for a few years now, and I just think even just the financial sacrifices they must have made must have almost broke them, honestly. So never ever ever forget that even though you're sacrificing things like going to your friends' birthdays or going to parties or whatever it may be, that your parents and caregivers are also sacrificing so much to help you achieve your goals, and never take that for granted. Some pros of living and growing up in such a small town is the strong sense of community, especially when you've got a pretty rich family history in that one place and everyone knows your mum and dad. You always know that someone is looking out for you when you need it. And another is really learning to appreciate the little things and the idea of working hard for what you want. Because in places like Mount Isa, a lot of things aren't as accessible as they are in the city. So you learn the idea of creating your own fun and experiences. Because travel is so expensive from there, you work really hard to save up to be able to afford that trip. Just little things like that, I guess. Fast forward to the beginning of 2017, just before my 19th birthday. I had graduated high school just over a year beforehand, and I was almost finished my apprenticeship. I was heading to Dublin to compete in my first World Championships. I was determined to move to Brisbane as soon as possible, and I knew I wanted to work at Rixon Hair specifically because I knew that if I wanted to be the best cutter and the best stylist, that I had to work for Brad. So I got on the phone and rang in, and soon enough my resume was sent to my current bosses, Brad and Sharon Rixon. They took a chance on this little old country boy and took me in, and I stayed and lived in Brisbane as soon as I landed back in Australia after Worlds that year. At this point, I was determined to be financially independent, and so I was paying for living expenses like rent, groceries, utilities, my car, public transport, but also because I was still hugely invested in my dance career, I would have class and competition fees, travel costs, costumes and shoes, you know the drill. Additionally, on top of this, I knew and still know now that I didn't want to be just a hairdresser that just works in the salon and goes home and that's all. I wanted to be involved in fashion and the editorial and competition side of the industry too, and that definitely comes at a price, both in time and money. Some photo shoots can cost in the tens of thousands of dollars. The same as dancing. You put that like extra work in outside of your everyday. So in this instance, you put that extra work in outside of the salon to achieve those goals that you want to. Trying to set out a budget and a diary is the best way to go about staying on top of things. I knew that I was in Brisbane to advance in my hairdressing and dancing career, and collectively they were my world. So I knew that together they would come at a price, and you could say I wasn't the richest kid on the block, but hey, that was another sacrifice I knew I had to make in order to achieve my goals. When I first moved to Brisbane, I was there to do a job. I was there to advance in my hairdressing and dancing careers, and I was there to be better. So of course, me being me and the way I was brought up, I was not going to do anything by halves. I came in full steam ahead, and that energy hasn't really changed to this day, I don't think. However, a few priorities have, I guess you could say. When I first moved, I was still competing in solos as well as teams. So I had 3 classes a week, plus more than likely I had a workshop on Sunday that took up a huge chunk of the day. And then I would be practicing at home and go to the gym whenever I got the chance as well. And I was also working full-time in the salon as well as doing extra hair-related things outside of the salon as well, like training or educating, assisting, doing photo shoots. For me, dancing and hair were my absolute non-negotiables. If I had to miss something because of work or dancing, I was missing it, almost without hesitation. So 2018 came about, and I was given the incredible opportunity of being asked to tour with A Taste of Ireland in their St. Patrick's Day tour across South Australia, Victoria and New South Wales. It was honestly one of the most fulfilling experiences of my life because, one, I knew I had worked hard to be up on that stage in front of hundreds of people every night, and 2, because I knew it was a childhood dream of mine. It was a jam-packed 11-day tour, and we danced 11 shows in 11 cities back to back. Incredibly exhausting, but again, a memory I'll literally cherish forever. In 2019, I was lucky enough to sneak in on the 2019 Australian tour. I danced in front of my hometown in Mount Isa, so that was an absolute dream come true. Like seeing people's faces in the audience that have been a part of your life and upbringing since day one, and to have helped shape you into the person you are today, especially my own family, even my big brothers, they came to a dance show. The fact I got to dance professionally for my nan was also a pretty special moment too. Seeing the local kids and how excited they were about seeing a dance show come to their town was such a humbling feeling. I really went into that show hoping I could inspire them to really think bigger and know that they can literally achieve even their wildest dreams, regardless of where they grew up. So after a lot of, I guess, reflection over this weird little time we're all going through right now, I've really started to reflect on what's really shaped me into the person I am today. And other than my amazing friends and family, dancing has definitely really played a huge role in that. And you know, although the 3-time state champion and the runner-up national champion and the world qualifier, the professional dancer, you name it, all those titles are priceless to me because I know that I've worked my butt off to achieve them all and everything that I have within my dancing career. However, it's honestly the life lessons, I guess you would call them, that we don't even know that we're learning at the time that dancing taught us, that really stick with you through whatever you do outside of the dance world. My biggest pieces of advice that I want people to take away from my journey so far, both in and out of dancing, are 1, find your tribe. Make sure that the people you're investing your energy in and that you're hanging around believe in your goals just as much as you do, if not more than you do. Behind every successful person is a team. Number 2, always go the extra mile. Whether it's doing an extra step or extra full run through, extra work outside of normal work hours. If you have the opportunity to, always do extra because it's only going to benefit you in the long run. If you're willing to do what others won't, you'll always have what others don't. Call me Dr. Seuss, but live by that. This is number 3. The things you learn at dancing will stay with you well beyond the walls of the studio. Trust me. Number 4, live in the moment and don't take anything for granted. Have your goals big or small, but what are you doing right now to achieve them? Number 5, in order to achieve your goals, you're going to have to make sacrifices, no doubt about it. Number 6, regardless of where you grow up, be my absolute guest to let your dreams and your ultimate goals run wild, far beyond what you think is possible. and then set a plan and work your butt off to make it happen. Number 7, hard work will always win. Always. And number 8, this is one that I'm still working on, but I think we can work on it together. Stop comparing yourself to everyone else. Let things inspire you to better yourself, but don't copy and definitely don't compare. Stay in your own lane, run your own race, but always listen to your mentors and teachers' advice. Alright you guys, that is all from me for this episode of Journey to the Stage. Comment below your favorite thing I discussed in this episode, and don't forget to like and subscribe below for more A Taste of Ireland content. Subscribe below to see next week's episode of Journey to the Stage, and hit the bell icon to get notified every time A Taste of Ireland upload a new video. See you later!